Let's waste no time now bringing in my next guest, John Zogby of John Zogby Strategies. Now, John, we are really starting to see already at this early stage the polls start to heat up, the interest in the U.S. presidential campaign starting to fire up. We're seeing an awful lot of discontent all over the spectrum with Joe Biden, as we've been speaking out throughout the program. But I want to ask you about this because you've got another perspective. You say that unemployment is down in the U.S., the economy is looking stronger, inflation's pulling back, Trump has been indicted. Your question is, why aren't Americans rallying to Biden? I think it's an interesting question, and given some of the headline numbers, you'd think he might be doing better. Why not?
Well, obviously, age is an issue, not simply become an issue. It is an issue, and the White House seems to have lost control of that issue. And what makes it particularly acute is the fact that, any CEO needs to be able to provide the board of directors and the stockholders a succession plan, a sense that, if he or she were to face a demise of some sort, that the ship of state, the company, would continue business as usual. And so the problem is that while Biden may be able ultimately to convince voters that his record has been a successful one, voters know that he's 80 years old and they wonder, well, what's the succession plan? And in this case, Kamala Harris's numbers are significantly worse than the president. She has really very little record of accomplishment, and her favorability numbers and approval ratings are in the mid-30s. And so I think by not dealing with that issue, it's become an even greater issue than it should be.
So, John, what you're saying here essentially is that the Biden administration is now a victim of its own attempt to play identity politics back in 2020 by saying we're going to select a black woman, but they wound up with somebody who, wound up being about the worst choice that they could get, who is now protecting them, or essentially, protecting Joe Biden from any Democrat challenges, but also is now the one that's causing all this problems because nobody wants to see her be the president next.
Wow, James, did I say it that way? I didn't quite put it that way.
But I'm wondering, is that
No.
the case?
Well, it is the case. I think you could make the case that it was a mistake putting Kamala on. I never quite understood it because, going back to that famous first Democratic debate, she violated a lot of rules. She went after, a popular former vice president and icon, and she brought out the race card at the same time. And, arguably the reason why she was put on the ticket was not because she could carry a state, she was going to get California anyway, but arguably because she checked a number of identity boxes. Yeah, so in that sense, I mean, you're really right. But since that time, once becoming vice president, she's been relatively invisible in terms of the White House, in terms of policy, in terms of being assigned an important task and succeeding at that task. And let's just call it what it is. It was a mistake. But how do you admit that you made a mistake? George H.W. Bush had Dan Quayle going into a second term, and we had the similar debate back then. Dan Quayle becoming somewhat of the butt of jokes, but George H.W. Bush knowing, hey, look, I can't go to voters and say I made a mistake the first time, and so the voters were able to ignore Dan Quayle to a great degree. But in this instance, you really can't ignore Kamala Harris because of the age issue. And so in order for Biden to effectively deal with this age issue, he's going to have to, put forward somebody who actually can be president of the United States.
And who do you think that could be? I mean, a lot of people are talking about Gavin Newsom, But Republicans say, well, if they run Gavin Newsom, California is its own campaign ad for the Republicans. When you look at the state of the streets in San Francisco, Los Angeles, what's happened to the economy, how many people are moving out of California to go to Texas and Florida, and all of these other factors. Are there other choices out there besides, say, Gavin Newsom? Klobuchar from Minnesota is somebody I hear a bit about.
You hear a bit about Amy Klobuchar. You can run and lose and help yourself, and she raised her national profile. I think Gretchen Whitmer, the governor of Michigan, not without controversy, but someone who then turned around that controversy and won a re-election in Michigan and won big. There's potential there, and that's potential to keep women and to do well in Midwestern states like Michigan, possibly Ohio and Wisconsin. Cory Booker is another senator, from New Jersey, has a powerful story, has had some maturity, not only as the mayor of Newark, but as the senator now for a number of years from New Jersey. Is a powerful speaker and also lost in 2020, but did not hurt himself in the process. Those are just a few names. There is a bench here, if the bench is allowed a profile.
John Zogby, that's absolutely fascinating. It sounds like there's an awful lot of wild cards here, which a lot of people haven't yet considered yet. Thank you so much for your time and your insight into this, and look forward to speaking again.